I believe God is for me. I can't honestly say that I am just lucky. Everything I have is a gift. You will never hear me say I deserve everything I get. I get more than I deserve.
Well, good morning. Hey, I wanted to start out today talking about something that I know not everybody is connected to, but hang in there even if you're not a Facebook person, because I think it'll make a connection for you. A few years ago, Facebook came up with a new status, and what they did was they created this situation where you could mark yourself safe, and the whole idea behind it was which some of these things are happening right now, if there's a hurricane or a flood or a fire or something, and maybe you can't get phone service, or maybe you can't connect with people that you care about and that you love because they don't live in the same place, that you could go to Facebook, you could change your status to marked safe, and that way people, even if they couldn't talk to you or connect with you, they would know that you were okay. And so, like everything else, it didn't take very long before people started kind of making jokes about it and created some memes and things like that. And so you saw things like marked safe from work today, didn't go in today. Marked safe from school. I saw one marked safe from detention. I would have put mine as marked safe from Tucson, that I'm not connected to U of A in any way. And it's okay. It's all right. If you Tucson people, I understand you were challenged early. But basically, people would kind of make fun of this idea of marked safe, but nobody's really making fun of it right now. Because everybody wants to feel safe. And the reason we want to feel safe, and the reason so many people want to feel safe, is because they don't. Anxiety and fear have kind of run rampant in our culture, in our society. And I want to say this morning, maybe you don't feel that at all. You may be kind of one of those that, I don't feel any anxiety, I don't feel any fear, I'm fine, I'm doing well. And if that is the case, I'm glad for you. I'm actually really excited for you. And my encouragement to you would be, instead of being frustrated with the people that do feel anxiety and fear, just take it on yourself. Since God has blessed you that way, be an encouragement to the other people. Because the truth is, there's a lot of people that are struggling really hard right now. And this was before 2020, okay? So I want to throw some facts at you, but this was before 2020. The American Association for Depression and Anxiety, they monitored this kind of stuff. In the end of 2019, they said that over 40 million adults in the United States have been diagnosed with anxiety. So had actually gone to a doctor or a counselor, psychologist, whatever, and come away with a diagnosis of suffering from anxiety. And those same experts say that they estimate it's actually probably about twice that, because a lot of people never get treated, never go see the doctor, never take any kind of medical course to treat it. And so their estimates are that maybe as many as 80 million people, 80 million adults in the United States are struggling with anxiety. And I heard that and I thought, man, that's a huge number. What could be behind that? Because I'm like everybody else. I have my moments where I'm uncomfortable. I have moments where I feel a little anxious. I have moments where I feel fearful, but I don't know that I would diagnose myself that way. And yet 80 million people potentially, that's a huge portion of our population. And I think, okay, well, what is it that's causing all this? Where is this coming from? And so I know it's not the perfect place, but it's the best place I could go to. I went to WebMD, and I just, causes of anxiety. And they said, again, this is pre-2020. You got to remember that. This is before this year started. They said there's 6 top causes of anxiety in the United States, and especially among adults. And so as I was looking through this, I'm thinking, well, let's see how this compares to kind of where we've been, right? So the first one was right out of the gate. It said undue or extra stress from work or school. Like, well, okay, check that box, for most people. Work and school and things like that have caused some anxiety in 2020. So undue stress from work and school. The second one was a broken or damaged personal relationship. So somebody close to you, a child-parent relationship, a spouse relationship, a close friend relationship, that somehow that personal relationship has been damaged. Maybe there's an argument, maybe there's controversy, whatever it might be. And I'm thinking for a lot of folks, yeah, they can kind of check that box for 2022, unfortunately. So not only did you have the stress from work and school, not only did you have things going on in personal relationships, the number 3 cause of anxiety is financial hurdles, unexpected financial burdens and financial burdens, stuff I wasn't expecting, stuff I wasn't counting on, stuff I'm not sure how to pay for because of changes at work or whatever it might be. That's the third biggest cause. So for a lot of folks, again, 2020, I can check that box too. The next one, almost everybody can check. It was any kind of national or global or political unrest, right? If there's things not going well in the world, that can cause anxiety for folks. So yeah, we can check that box. That's number 4. Number 5, I hope you can't check this box, but unfortunately a lot of people can, is the death of someone close to you, a close friend or a family member or something like that. And then the number 6 cause was any kind of medical condition or threat to your overall health. Now remember, all of these were written in 2019, right? So 2020 has basically been the perfect anxiety storm. And if you're not feeling it, like I said, that is great. We are excited and happy for you. But the truth is, many of the people around you are feeling this intensely. And if they already had some anxiety, this whole storm of things that have happened in the last 6 months have just kind of piled on, right? I mean, you've heard the adage, you are what you eat. Come on, give me a little help. Raise your hand. You are what you eat. Okay, 6 of you. Great. The rest of you, this is new information. Nobody ordered the heaping bowl of anxiety, right? But it seems like that's who we are as a culture. Somehow we ate that, and that's where we've been living. I read a really interesting article by Dylan Smith. Dylan Smith is a really thoughtful 22-year-old, and he was writing about his generation. So he's writing about older teenagers and people in their 20s. And he said it this way. He said, my generation is facing a mental health crisis that nobody wants to talk about. He said the danger of it all is that we know where it comes from, and we know what causes it, but our phones are too good to give up, and we have a crisis we don't know how to deal with. And just to clarify, if you didn't get to read the whole article, I understand, but he wasn't saying that having a cell phone is the reason for your anxiety. He was talking about the access the cell phone gives. That 24/7, I have media, social media, and other information just flooding across my face all day, every day. And as you know, and I'm not judging anybody, a lot of people are living their lives through their screens right now. And as they're scrolling and as they're reading and as they're looking, time and time and time again, what they're taking in is anxiety-inducing information. And Dylan is pretty smart, and he realized, we're not built for this. We are not designed to take in bad news all day, every day, and it not affect us. And he's saying the problem is we're hooked on it, and we can't get rid of it, and yet it's what's causing our problem. And so this is kind of where we're all living right now. We're dealing with all of this stuff. And for a lot of people, the idea that God doesn't want them to live this way seems really foreign because they don't know how to live any other way. That they're so used to an emotionally ragged life, the idea of anything else seems kind of foreign or strange. Like, what would that be like? How would you even do that? It's been so long since I've lived a life that wasn't emotionally ragged. I don't know what that would feel like. And then you come to Mountain Ridge Church. And Mountain Ridge Church starts a new series called More Than I Deserve. And that series is about how God is good and God is gracious to us. And it wouldn't be surprising if you kind of felt like, how does this go together? How do I put together the anxiety, the fear, the struggle that I feel, and you telling me that God is good and God is gracious and that God favors me? Pastor Corey did a great job, introduced a phrase you're going to hear over and over through this whole series, that you are heavily favored by your heavenly Father. So how does anxiety and fear fit into that? And the answer is, it doesn't. And if you don't get anything else out of today, I hope you get a lot out of today, but if you don't get anything else out of today, understand this. God's design and desire for your life is not for you to live it anxious and afraid. That is not part of his plan for you. And so if you've got a Bible or if you'd like to follow along in the app, I want to encourage you to go to Psalm 125. Psalm 125 is in the middle of a group of psalms, and they're exactly what they said. They're songs. And it's one of 10 songs that were considered a song of ascent. The idea of ascending or going up something, and you think, well, what does that have to do with anything? This is actually really important. It's going to make this psalm make a lot more sense if you understand this one little piece. You see, if you were a Jewish person, 3 times a year, you would go to Jerusalem. And it was a celebration thing. It wasn't a duty. It was kind of like Christmas or spring break or something like this. It was like, oh, finally, we're to Pentecost, or we're to Passover, we're to the Feast of Tabernacles. That means what happens is we get together as a family. We're going to eat good. We're going to hang out. We're going to take some time off of work. We're going to get together with our community. We're going to worship God. We're going to celebrate. This is going to be a good time. And so 3 times a year, they got to experience this. And one thing that's interesting about this, and this is fine if you're not a map person or whatever, a geography person, but in the nation of Israel, even today, if you look at their boundaries, one of the highest points in the nation of Israel is the city of Jerusalem, the elevation. And so if you traveled to Jerusalem, you always had to go uphill. It's kind of like if you go to Flagstaff from Phoenix, you always have to go uphill because it's higher than Phoenix is. And so the Bible always talks about they went up to Jerusalem because Jerusalem was high above. And not only was Jerusalem high above, it was surrounded by mountains. So no matter where you lived or where you came from, you were going to come and you were going to go up a mountain to get to Jerusalem. And that's why they call these the songs of ascent. They would sing these songs as they traveled. And they didn't have TV. They couldn't watch Netflix. They couldn't do all that stuff while they were riding in the car. So one of the things they did was they sang these songs. And they did it for a few reasons. One, yes, it helped pass the time, but much more importantly than that, it prepared their hearts. We're going to worship. We're going to celebrate. This is a good thing. We sing when we're happy, and so singing helped them enjoy the process. And maybe most important of all, these songs really told them something. It told them about who they were and who God was. And so these songs became very meaningful and very important to them, just like you probably have some of your favorite songs, whether it's a Christmas song or a song that you listened to in high school or whatever it was, that song that became important to you. And when you hear it on the radio, it takes you back immediately. You know, for some of you, you go back to the 2000s. Others of you go back to the 70s and 60s or whatever it might be. But that song that takes you back was the same thing. These songs took them back. They were important parts of their culture and their heritage. And like I said, it was going up. And that's important too, because I want to share this with you. As you look at Psalm 125, it says it this way. It says, those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken, but endures forever. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people, both now and forevermore. And stop right there, because we have a picture of Jerusalem I want to show you. And in this picture, what you see is what they would see. And it's exactly the same way. And so as they're coming to Jerusalem, one of the things about it is surrounded like Phoenix is in a valley. Jerusalem was kind of surrounded by mountains, except it was much, much tighter. Like you go out here and you can look and you can see mountains maybe on a clear day far, far away. In Jerusalem, you can see where they took this picture. You can see the mountains on the opposite side of the city. They're almost in this bowl, if you will. And so here's what's going on, okay? They're traveling, and they're coming from wherever they're coming from, whatever direction, it doesn't matter. They come up a mountain, and as they come up the mountain, the first thing they see, if you see in the middle of that picture, you see that golden dome. That wasn't there. The temple was actually there. And it sat on the highest part of Jerusalem, which is Mount Zion, and Jerusalem was one of the highest elevations in Israel. And so this is why they're going up. And what happens, if you can kind of get it in your mind, if you think you've been walking, you've been traveling, you're trying to get there, you're excited about what's going to happen, you finally get over the top of the mountain, and you see the temple. And you see the city. And this is God's temple. And this is God's chosen city. And this is God's chosen people. And there's something emotional and meaningful about coming over that mountain, and they see it, and everything seems right again. And the psalm says, just like the mountains circle Mount Zion, God encircles his people. And he says that mountain cannot be shaken, that it's permanent. It doesn't move. This was the strongest thing they could think of and they could conceptualize. What's stronger than a mountain? Nothing. And so they sing this song, and as they're coming over the hill, they see it, and it corresponds with everything they just sang and everything that they're seeing. And for you and I, here's what it means. It says, for those who trust in the Lord, anyone who trusts in the Lord, for those who trust in the Lord are surrounded, not shaken. And I know in the moment, and I know maybe in your situation, and we're going to get there, I promise you, you may feel like you are being shaken. But those who trust in the Lord, it says, are surrounded, not shaken. And this idea of trusting in the Lord, this is really, really important. Because if you're still one of those, few that still carry cash and spend money, if you look, it still says on your money somewhere, in God we trust. And for a lot of people, let's face it, it's meaningless. Nobody really spends a lot of time studying their money and thinking about what that means and everything else. It's just money, whatever we do. It's kind of a logo, it's a catchy saying, whatever it might be. That's not what they meant. When they said those who trust in the Lord, they meant something very, very different. And here's what I want you to imagine. I know this is a little bit of a strange analogy, but this really helped me. I want you to imagine yourself, just for the moment, sitting at a table. You're sitting in a chair at a table. And in front of you, sitting on the table, is everything. It's the keys to your house, your car. It's all the important paperwork in your life, your bank accounts, your insurance policies, everything that you have and everything that you own. And I know this part, it kind of gets a little strange. Take something that symbolizes the most important people in your life and put that on the table too. Everything you care about, all your hobbies, all your interests, everything you have, all the relationships in your life that are important to you, all of it is somehow, some way piled in front of you as you sit at this table. And across the table is God. And as you sit at that table, when they say those who trust in the Lord, this is what they mean. Those who sit at that table and look God in the eye, and from the deepest part of who they are, this is, like I said, this isn't a logo, this isn't a saying. With everything they have, they push that pile across the table and they say, God, I trust you. I trust you when things are going well. I trust you when things are not going well. I trust you when I get the job that I've been waiting on. And I trust you when I get the bad news from the doctor. I trust you when my kids are doing what they're supposed to, and I trust you when my kids are not doing what they're supposed to. I trust you when I'm getting along great with my spouse, and I trust you when we're really wondering about our future. God, I'm pushing it all across the table, and I trust you. When they say those who trust in the Lord are surrounded but not shaken, that's what it's talking about. And I know that seems dramatic, but I don't want to undersell this. I don't want you to think this is just the idea of, oh yeah, God's out there and he's going to take care of us and I trust him. Me and God are good. No. This is me going all in. Everything I got. God, I trust you. And he says, when you trust God like that, you're surrounded. And you're never shaken. And in the middle of the difficulty, because there is going to be difficulty, there's no promises that you're never going to struggle or that you're not going to have a hard moment or that things aren't going to go against you. Of course they are. And that's what I love about this psalm, because if you look at verse 3, they deal with that. This song actually deals with that. This isn't all pie in the sky. He says the scepter of the wicked will not remain over the land allotted to the righteous. In other words, evil is not going to go on forever. For then the righteous might use their hands to do evil. It basically, for that moment that it seems like the people that are trying to hurt you, the people that are against you, the situations that are causing you problems, when it feels like those things are in control, they're reminding themselves that no, they're not in control. Ultimately, it's God who is in control. And yes, I may struggle. And yes, I may have my moments, but God has said it will not be more than I can endure. And God has said evil will not win. It will not win the day. This is not how the story ends, even though this chapter is awful. This is not how the story ends. But at the same time, we got to be real. We do face trouble. We do have to deal with loss. We do have things that make us feel unsettled. That we doubt ourselves. We wonder about our future. We get concerned. We give up. We face these kinds of things. And the psalmist is not blind to that. It's not pretending like everything is perfect. It's simply reminding us that you are surrounded, not shaken, and even though you're in a bad season, it's not permanent. And then look how it finishes with a very simple prayer in verse 4. Lord, do good to those who are good, to those who are upright in heart. But to those who turn to crooked ways, the Lord will banish them with evildoers. Peace be on Israel. And you kind of read that and you think, well, that's, it's kind of a poem, it's kind of a song. What is he trying to say? And it's really pretty simple. For those of God that actually trust you, God, for those that are trying to walk the right way, for those who are trying to be good and do good and want to please you, God, would you bless them? Would you encourage them? Would you help them? And God, for those that are trying to do harm, that are abusive, that are taking advantage, that are using their power and their position to get their way, even when it hurts other people. God, would you let that boomerang back on them? Let the consequences hit them instead of us. It's a very simple prayer. And then finally, God, give us peace. Because the reality is, you know this, you don't want to just not be afraid. And you don't want to just not have anxiety. That's not enough. God has better than that for you. What God has for you is peace. It's not just that you're not afraid. It's that you have peace. And we're going to talk about that more in just a moment. But there's something really significant happening in this psalm. If I could sum it all up, and I know this is like a big philosophical statement, but I think it's going to help. What's actually happening in this psalm is these people are understanding where their security comes from, because they're no different than you are. Most of us try to manufacture it, right? Like, I'm going to figure out a way to organize and manipulate my life and coordinate things so that financially, health-wise, family-wise, whatever it is, I never have to worry. I'm going to try to build in all these protections and make sure I never get hurt and nothing can ever harm me. And I'm going to create a safe life for myself and the people around me. And if I can do that, then I will feel secure, which it doesn't work. Right? If anything, 2020 has shown us that doesn't work. You can build whatever you want to build. You can arrange whatever you want to arrange. It doesn't work. So where does the security come from? Your security comes from your identity. For those who trust in God, you may not be sure of yourself, and let me just be honest, you shouldn't be. But you can be sure of God, and God is sure of you. That's where your security comes from. Your confidence is not in the things that you do or the things that you have or the arrangements that you can make. Your confidence is in a God who is sure of you. That's who you are. That's who we are. We are the people of God. And our security is not based on an election. It is not based on a virus. It is not based on any other thing that's happened this year or has happened in the past. Our security is based on God. But yet, like I said, it's a big overarching statement. It's great. Oh, okay, I went to church and I learned that my security is based on my identity, and what am I going to do with that on Monday? What do I do with that when stuff gets hard and when I'm starting to feel upset and when things aren't going my way? Then what do I do? I guess if I could put it in another format, you are going to deal with fear and anxiety. Where you start makes a huge difference. If you're starting from a place of peace, you are actually going to win out over your fear and anxiety. If you are not starting from a place of peace, it's not going to help, really, to be honest with you, whatever you do. You see, I get peace from God when I am at peace with God. That's how this works. Everything is sourced out of Him. There's nothing that I can do internally to make myself safe. I can't do it. I know that everybody tells you that that is the way you do this. That you build barriers and defenses around yourself. We're going to talk about that. That I'm going to somehow make myself safe by creating something inside. And it's such the wrong approach. Your help comes from the outside. And the problem is not the outside. The problem is the inside. And God comes along and He says, if you will trust me, I will bring you peace, and I will help you be secure because of who I am. So let's talk about how this actually works in real life. See, most of us feel fear, right? And in the ancient world, their fear was a little bit different, but they did the exact same thing that you do. In the ancient world, they were afraid because literally at any time, somebody could ride by and steal your stuff. There's no police, there's no army, there's no nothing. You're just on your own. They could actually grab you, grab your kids, grab your family, and take you off and make you a slave. Or they could just kill you and take everything. I mean, they were afraid physically because they were in danger. And so what did they do? They built cities and they built walls and moats and gates, and they built a system of defense so that they could feel safe. And we do the same thing, like I just said. The psychologists call it our self-defense mechanisms. We build up all this stuff that I'm going to make sure I'm safe and I'm going to stay away from things. And so it looks different for everybody. But for some people, it's like, hey, there's a bunch of strangers going to be at this party or this thing at work or this other thing, so I'm not going to go because I feel uncomfortable around strangers. Something might happen, and so I'm not going to go. That's fear, that's anxiety. It could be the person that lives feeling like they've always got to look over their shoulder, like something's coming, something bad is about to happen. I know it's coming. I feel it all the time. It's just always right there. That's anxiety. That's fear. It could be that you have an inner critic that just rides you mercilessly every time you make a mistake. How could you do that? Why did you do that? Who would make that kind of mistake? What do you think you're doing? I mean, it looks different for everybody. But fear and anxiety keep showing up. And so we build these self-defenses. And here's where you are different as God's people. You see, when you're not trusting in God, you have to build these defenses yourself. But when you put your trust in God, we don't have to build our own defenses. The psalm just told us, God encircles his people. Let me put it another way. Tomorrow, when you feel afraid, God has said, I'm surrounding you. I am surrounding you. You. I've got you. And that sets your heart at ease a little bit, but let me share with you something else you may not know. In John chapter 17, I don't know if you knew this, Jesus actually prayed for you. He prayed for you individually, and he prayed for all the yous that are putting their trust in God. He prayed for you. He said in John 17:11, he says, Father, I pray that you would guard them. In John chapter 17, verse 15, he says, Father, I pray not that you would take them out of the world. I get it. They're going to live there. They're going to have to deal with some stuff. Their lives are not in glass cases. The world is real and evil is real and there's stuff going on. But God, guard them from the evil one. So when you feel afraid, sometimes the best thing you can do is step back and realize that God says, I've got you surrounded, and Jesus himself is praying for you. You're not going to get more secure than that. You are not going to get more secure than God surrounding you and Jesus praying for you. But what about anxiety? Anxiety is one of those, when I think about anxiety, I think of it this way. I think of it as almost slipping, right? Like if you've ever walked on a really slippery rock trail, if you go hiking or something, you feel like you're always going to slip. Or worse yet, if you have really worn out Crocs like I do and somebody hoses off the patio, there is no traction, right? This is a broken tailbone waiting to happen. So as soon as you take a step, you feel it and you just feel all the time like you're about to go down. That's what anxiety is, right? It's that inside feeling that's about to crash. I'm about to go down and I don't like it and I'm uncomfortable. And yet I read this psalm and it says that nothing shakes those who trust in the Lord. I'll just be vulnerable with you guys. I get shaken all the time. I mean, sometimes it's for a moment, sometimes it's for a minute, sometimes it's for days. I get shaken all the time. I don't know about you. It says nothing shakes them, and I think nothing could be further from the truth, right? Some days I wake up, and I'm happy, and I'm excited, and I'm joyful, and I know that good things are going to happen, and that God's with me, and great things are on track. And other days I wake up, and I'm moody, and I'm grumpy, and I don't know why, and it feels like things are not going to go well today or tomorrow, maybe for a long time. And I can't even explain why. And I know that I can be shaken because I see sometimes I'm joyful and sometimes I'm sad. Sometimes I'm really excited about what's happened. Sometimes I fail and I'm really frustrated. And how is it that nothing can shake me? Am I just doing this wrong? I don't know if you've ever come across the Enneagram. The Enneagram is one of these personality profile tools, and some people like it, some people think it's silly. There's all kinds of internet ones floating around, and the reason I actually like the Enneagram just a little bit is because not only does it help you with your personality stuff, but what is behind it. This actually has its roots several hundred years ago, and it was developed by Christians, and what they were trying to do is say, look, we see that there's different personality types, from like perfection to peacemaker to overachiever, whatever. We got all these personality types. But here's what they were trying to do. Our personality impacts the way we interact with God, and it impacts the way we deal with temptation and stress and anxiety and all this other stuff. And so they were trying to find some insights into, hey, if I can learn about this, if I can see these warning signs, it'll be kind of a red light flashing and saying, hey, I'm heading in the wrong direction. And so that's kind of what was behind it. And I'm an Enneagram 1, if you know what all that is. Basically, I'm a perfectionist. And I was reading it, and as I was looking at it, the thing that really stopped me cold, unfortunately, was what Enneagram 1s do when they feel stressed and anxious. Because I read it, and I looked at it, and I couldn't deny any of them. I'm like, yep. I mean, it was eerily close. And the worst part about it was, as I read it, I thought, I would never want to be around this guy. I'm looking at all the negatives and I'm thinking, whew, oh yeah, that's me. I don't want to be that guy. I don't like this guy. And I'm going to share them with you, not because I think you have the same ones, but I hope you know what yours are. When you feel stressed, when you feel tired, when you feel like things aren't going your way, when you're not moving in the right direction spiritually, you've probably identified some things in your life that are kind of consistent with that. For me, anyway, one of the things that happens is when I feel stressed and like that, I procrastinate. I put things off because I feel like I can't do it right, so I don't want to do it at all. And so I just kind of push it away and pretend like it's not there. Whether that's something at work or something at home or something in a relationship, it can be anything, but the idea is let's just pretend like that's not really a problem and I don't have to deal with it. The other thing that happens when I feel a lot of anxiety is I have the inner critic that I talked about. It's just merciless. And what's ironic about it is it's not a self-worth thing. It's just this constant haranguing about mistakes. You made this mistake, you made that mistake, this didn't work well. You thought this was going to work and it didn't, and you messed that up, and you messed this up, and you messed that up. And it's just constant, it never goes away. And then really probably the worst part of all of it is when I'm really deep into this, I know this about myself. I know that it's true, and I hate that it's true, but it is. When I see other people enjoying themselves, but I feel anxious and stressed, I resent the fact that they are having good things happen in their life. Bothers me. And like I said, I don't tell you all this so that you can lose more respect for me than you already have, but just so that you understand there's stuff just like that in your life too. And what happens is, if we're not careful, we let those feelings determine if we're secure, if we have peace. And you know what? Your feelings are important. Don't get me wrong. God gave you your feelings. They're important. He created them. They're a good gift. But here's the problem with feelings. Feelings can do a lot of things, but feelings tell us almost nothing about God. They tell us almost nothing about God. As a matter of fact, if you read the Psalms, one of the things that you notice over and over and over again is almost every Psalm starts off with the author talking about how bad things are. In some cases, how good things are. God, thank you for this. Or God, why did you abandon us? God, help me, save me from my enemies. I'm on the run. God, don't you care anymore? God, I've been calling out to you. God, I need your help. God, look at this. Look at what's happening. Look how evil is prospering. It always starts off with how bad things are and how the person feels. And then it almost always comes back around. But this is who you are. There's something really important in that. And it's this, that you don't live by your feelings about God, but by the facts of God. And I know that sounds cold and unemotional. I'm not telling you to deny your feelings. I'm telling you to make sure you have a firm grasp of the facts. Because these people sang the song because they knew it to be true. That those who trusted in the Lord were surrounded. They couldn't be shaken. They had peace. Those were the facts. Their identity was telling them that we belong to God. We are God's people. And because we are God's people, no matter what's happening around us, and really even no matter what's happening in us, it does not change the fact we are secure in Him. He surrounds us. Jesus is praying for us. And no matter how I feel, no matter how badly I've failed, no matter how messed up my circumstances are, my best hope, my only hope is in the God who said He is sure of me and has promised to save me and accomplish His perfect will. And I am His son because I put my trust in Him and He has adopted me into His family. Those who trust in the Lord, not those who trust in the economy, not those who trust in the government, not those who trust in the social movements, not those who trust in their family, not those who trust in their finances and their wealth and their education and their experience and their jobs and their, whatever else you want to put in there. Not that those things are bad, but those things don't give you security. Those who trust in the Lord. And then it brings this incredible picture of sitting on the Temple Mount in God's temple in Jerusalem, God's city, in the nation of Israel, God's chosen people. And you're safe. And He says, peace be on Israel. And I think if I could translate that to 2020, it's real simple. God is saying to you, I know, relax. I've got you. I've got you. Your feelings matter. They don't determine your security. Yes, there are times you're going to feel afraid. There's times you're going to feel like you're slipping and falling. And the best thing you can do is go back and sing the song again to remind yourself that you are surrounded and you are not shaken. And God wants you to live in peace, not an emotionally ragged life. And so for some of you, you've never had that experience. You've never known that. You have felt anxiety, fear, or whatever else you want to call it most of your life. And the reason is you have never trusted God. You've never sat at the table and pushed all that forward and gone all in. And that may be the step that you need to take today. Maybe today the step you need to take is just simply say, I'm going to trust. I don't get it all. I don't understand everything. Sometimes my feelings are moving in different directions, but I'm going to trust God. And if you have never done that, today is the day. And if you're here in person, I would love to talk with you about that. You can stop by and see me at the Connect Center right after the service. If you're online, I want to invite you to go to mountainridge.org/online-connect and just simply send in a card to tell us, this is what God's doing in my life right now. I want to talk about trusting God. Many of you, you've already done that. And so maybe today was just a great reminder. But I want to challenge you to take it and make it a little bit more than just a reminder. I want to ask you to do something that's going to take you about 15 seconds a day. But I have a feeling it could change everything about next week, especially if you're feeling like you're slipping or if you're feeling like things are out of control. And it's very simply this. I want to challenge you just to take a moment and read Psalm 125, 1 and 2 in the morning before you get started. Before the anxiety creeps in, before the fear shows up, just read it. And maybe you'll find if you read it every day for a week that actually you begin to even memorize it. And you catch yourself during the day kind of replying and responding back in your own head when you are starting to feel the anxiety, when you are starting to feel a little uncomfortable. That those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken because it endures forever. And as the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people. And I love that last part, both now and forevermore. This is not a temporary thing. Maybe that's the step you need to take, is to simply work your way through Psalm 125 over these next several days and let it work its way into your heart, and the facts of God can override the feelings that you have in your heart. I want to invite you to pray with me right now.